Hi, and welcome to NT 181. This is the first of a three-course sequence that covers Windows Server 2016. Depending on your degree program, you may or may not take all three of the courses in this sequence. Again, this is NT 181 Network and Server Operating Systems. Want to just take a few minutes to go over the Canvas course site and just highlight a few important things here, and then we'll finish up taking a quick look at NetLab, which will be the tool that you'll use for completing your assignments this term. Okay, so first off, on the Home tab on our page, you'll notice there's a link here under the course description with faculty and course information, and you can click on that link to find out my office hours and contact information. So make sure you take a look at that. And there's some other introductory stuff here on the home page that you can look over on your own time. The next section I want to highlight is the announcement section. Be sure that you go over all the announcements that I've posted here in week one. And also too, throughout the course, be sure that you're checking the announcements section at least a couple of times a week. I post a good bit of important information here, and anything that's posted here I will hold you accountable for. So my expectation is that you are reading all of the announcements. So again, make sure you check out the ones for week one. It covers the late policy, the welcome to the course, and then some information here about your lab guides, which are a part of your weekly assignments. Next section I want to highlight here is the modules section. Here you have your different modules. There's the introduction to the course up top, and then Unit 1, Unit 2, and so on. Each week you want to make sure you go through each of the modules, because they do contain your reading assignments as well as some additional learning materials. Just to take a quick look here at Unit 1, you'll notice this is the introduction to this unit. Then it goes into the first topic that's covered in this unit. Here's the reading assignment associated with that topic. And then here below that are some additional learning materials. If you click on Next, you'll see that here's the second topic for Unit 1 and the reading assignment that is associated with that, and then below that again more learning materials. And the last thing I want to look at here in this section after the topic 3 here is the information on NetLab. This screen here provides you with basic information that'll help you get started in NetLab. If you've never used NetLab here at Herzing University for another course, then the information you need to log in is right here. Basically, it gives you the format for your username and the format for your password as well, and then you'll create a new password the first time that you log in. I want to point out this video here. Make sure that you watch that. It's got some great information on using NetLab. So before you start your first assignment, you'll want to make sure that you're familiar with all of the information provided here. The next thing that I want to highlight is just the syllabus section of the course. And this is just a way for you to quickly get to any of your graded assignments. You can quickly access the weekly assignment or the discussion or the quiz. Keep that in mind. I guess the last thing I do want to look at here, the Unit 2 assignment, the last thing in Canvas that is the Unit 2 assignment. I suggest first off that you just ignore what's pasted directly into Canvas as far as the activities. What you want to do is just scroll down to the bottom, or toward the bottom, and you'll see 2 attachments to each of the assignments. The first one I'm going to click on here is the lab guide, and you want to use this lab guide instead of, again, what's pasted directly into Canvas, because what's here is complete and actually gives you some additional information, such as if there's a problem with the instructions in the textbook or something, I'll highlight that here. And usually that will be something that's in red, or sometimes it's just a strong hint like this one here that I give you, to just to help you get through the lab. But essentially this tells you activity by activity what you need to do, and each time you see a bullet point, that's a screenshot you need to get, and so you can just paste those screenshots right in this document, at the appropriate section. Next, the lab guide with examples. I want to show you that as well, and you need to be using this. It's the same as the lab worksheet that the lab guide we just took a look at. The only difference is that this document also has the screenshots. So notice that there are watermarks so that these screenshots can't just be copied, but essentially this shows you what your screenshots should look like. And when I'm going through and I'm grading your assignment each week, I'm going to look to see that your screenshot is identical to the example provided. If your screenshot is different, you may not receive any credit for it. So again, use this as an example and make sure that your screenshots look exactly like these, aside from the watermark that's on them. Okay, so the very last thing I want to talk about here is NetLab, and again, a lot of what you need to know I've already kind of gone over with this, but I just want to show you real quick. When you log into NetLab, the first thing you're going to want to do is schedule a reservation. You can do that by clicking on the drop down arrow beside schedule, or just click on new lab reservation. You'll notice that I have some additional options here that you won't have, but essentially you'll just schedule a lab for yourself. You'll scroll down to look for our course, NT 181, Network and Server Operating Systems Online. You'll click on that. And our course here in NetLab essentially has two different lab environments. One of them is titled Windows Server 2016. The other is titled Windows Server 2016 Hyper-V. Essentially, if you're doing anything with virtual machines within Hyper-V, you'll want to use the Hyper-V lab setup. Your lab guides will instruct you as far as when to use that. I'm going to click on the top one here and just walk through the steps of scheduling a reservation. Notice that I can pick on any day on the calendar, but I'm just going to click at the current time so that it'll come up quickly. I don't need it for that long period of time. Notice that you can schedule yours for longer if you want to. I'm just going to shorten mine up here and click submit and click OK. And so now, since I scheduled for a current time, I have the enter lab button available to me. If you scheduled for a later time, you won't be able to enter your lab until your reservation is active. So I'm going to go ahead and click on enter lab so I can show you what the lab environment looks like. And here it is. So the first thing I want to point out is this option to request more time. I can click on this button up here and it'll extend my lab reservation time, so it'll give me a little more time to work. Notice that we come in on looking at the topology. Anything, as far as this course is concerned, anything having to do with routers and switches you can ignore. We're just focused on the servers. You can access the servers by clicking on them or by clicking up here on the various tabs. I'm going to click on server DC1, and you'll notice that the server is still coming up. It's not quite all the way up yet. Once it does come up, we will need to hit Control-Alt-Delete and log in. One thing I want to point out is that you're not going to hit Control-Alt-Delete on your local computer, because that won't work. That will just perform the action on your home computer, not in NetLab. So you'll need to take advantage of these buttons up here to do this. So notice again, it says press Control-Alt-Delete to unlock. So we'll come up here to our server, click on it, and click on Send, Control-Alt-Delete. And so that'll do exactly that. Now we type in the administrator password that we learned about earlier. Again, this is on each of your lab guides, but it's password 01 with a capital P. And now you'll see we'll come up to the desktop on this server. Okay, a couple of other things I want to show you. Notice your space here is kind of minimized. You know, you just don't. It's not using your whole monitor screen. To remedy this, you can come up here and click Undock, and it will undock the server. You can then maximize it and use your whole monitor screen for that. And to go back to dock it again, you can just click on the menu there and dock it, and it'll come back into NetLab. And you can switch back and forth between servers by just clicking on the buttons up top, or you can get back to the topology by clicking on the topology button. Again, your assignment instructions are the activities in your textbook. So when you're working in NetLab, you'll be following along and completing the activities in your textbook. Okay, well, that's pretty much all that I wanted to cover here. Again, pretty much any question that you could have at this point has either been covered in this video or is covered in one of the announcements that's posted in the announcements section of the course. So again, be sure to take a look at those. But if you do come across something that you can't seem to find an answer for, just shoot me a quick message using the Canvas messaging tool, and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to working with you this term. And this is where you can come to just get quickly to any graded assignment. Instead of having to go through the module sections. For instance, you can get to an assignment, a discussion, or a weekly quiz. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you here in Canvas is I wanted to show you one of the assignments so you can kind of see how that's laid out. First off, I suggest that you just ignore any instructions that are provided for the activities directly in Canvas. Instead, what you're going to want to do is come down here and use these two attached documents. And the reason I say ignore what's directly in Canvas is because it's not complete, and what you have in the lab guides will be complete. So if we look at the first lab, the first document here that we're going to look at is the lab guide. And this is a document that you can paste your screenshots in, but also this gives you step-by-step instructions on the activities. Notice anything that's real important will be in red. For instance, like the password that you're using for the administrator account on the servers in NetLab. Down here, you'll see I've provided some additional information that may be helpful, and below that here is an example of a mistake in the textbook, and I've highlighted that and explained here what you need to do to correct that. So these are the types of things, these notes in red, these are the types of things that are not pasted directly into Canvas, and so that's why you need to come into the lab guide in order to to see those. Okay, so again, you can use this lab guide to complete your to put your screenshots into and just follow the instructions. The other document that you'll find attached to any assignment is the lab guide with examples. I'm going to click on that and open that up. You'll notice this is the same thing as the lab guide, except that this also has the screenshots. This shows you the screenshots that you need to get, and it shows you exactly what your screenshots need to look like, except that these have a watermark on them so that they can't just be easily copied. So each week when I'm grading your assignments, I'm going to look through your screenshots, and if your screenshots are identical to the examples that have been provided, of course without the watermark, then you're in good shape. However, if your screenshots don't match, then you may not get credit for them. So make sure when you're working on your activities and you're getting your screenshots that you have this lab guide with examples open so that you can verify that your screenshots are looking exactly like the examples that are provided. Okay, so the last thing that I want to touch on is NetLab. Again, I've shown you where you can get information on that in Canvas, but just to demonstrate for you real quick, here's NetLab. I've already logged in. What you'll have to do each week is schedule a reservation. I suggest you do this ahead of time. You can do that by clicking on the drop-down arrow beside schedule or clicking on the new lab reservation button. Notice I have more options than you do here because I have an instructor account, but essentially you're going to schedule a lab for yourself. Next thing you do is you come down, you click on the course, which is NT181, Network and Server Operating Systems Online. Once you click on that, you'll see that within our course in NetLab, we have two different lab environments. The first one is titled Windows Server 2016, and the last one is titled Windows Server 2016 Hyper-V. Essentially, if you're working with any virtual machines, you're going to want to be in the Hyper-V lab environment, and your lab guides will remind you of that and kind of point you in that direction. So I'm just going to go into the Windows Server 2016 here, schedule a reservation so that you can see the process. Notice I can click on any date on the calendar to schedule my reservation out ahead of time, but for purposes of this video, I'm just going to click on a current time and click submit. Okay, and so since my reservation is active, I have the Enter Lab button available to me now. This Enter Lab button will not be available until your reservation is active. So if you scheduled it for later on in the week, once it comes to that time, you'll see the Enter Lab button available to you. Okay, so notice once we come into the lab, what we have overall is a topology of the lab, and that's the button that's highlighted up here. For this course, we're only interested in the servers, so you will basically pay no attention to the routers or switches. And you can access the servers by either clicking on them or clicking on the appropriate button up top. I'm going to go ahead and click on server DC1. You'll notice first off that the server is still coming up, so we'll wait on that to come up. And once it comes up, I'll show you the method for logging in. On a server, unlike a workstation, you can't just click on the screen to get the login box to pop up. On a server, you have to actually hit Control-Alt-Delete. You can't do that on your keyboard because it will essentially perform that operation on your home computer, not on the server in NetLab. So fortunately, to get around that, in NetLab we have a tool that will send a Control-Alt-Delete. And so once we get to that screen where it says press Control-Alt-Delete, you'll hit send Control-Alt-Delete. And so it does that. It brings us up to log into the administrator account. If you remember, we saw earlier that the administrator password is always password01 with a capital P. That information is provided for you in the lab guide. And so once we type in that password and log in, notice that we're coming up to the desktop on this server. Okay, so a couple other little things real quick. If you click on the drop-down arrow beside the server, notice that we have the ability to undock this server. That gives you the ability to use your entire monitor instead of just a small space. This helps you, but it also helps me. When you get your screenshots, if you'll make sure the server is undocked, that'll actually make the screenshot a little larger and easier for me to read. Whenever you're through with a server, or if you need to temporarily get back to another server, you can just click on dock and it'll dock back into NetLab. To switch over to other servers, you can either click on the appropriate button up top, or you can click on topology and then click on the any of the server icons here. Okay, so that is pretty much it for this video. I believe between everything I talked about here and as well as what's on the announcements section should cover any questions that you have at this point in the course. However, if there's something that you can't seem to find an answer to, just be sure to send me a quick message in Canvas, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to working with you this term.